I will not talk too much about Kitara Capital because normally in a private equity environment we want to stay low. So what we do, what we are doing, those things I will not talk too much, except for the fact that we are about 500 or about 500 plus, about 600 million now US invested in India. We have been here for last 10, 11 years. We have been quite successful in our investment so far. And now we are starting Kitara 2.0, which means that, something different that we will be doing in the next decade. So I will rest my case about Kitara Capital um, at that point of here only. But basically, what makes me join private equity? See, over the last 30 years, equity, we have to understand one thing. Investment is something which it is the only profession where one can be really accountable. I exactly know what a person has done because ultimately his investment either make money or it doesn't make money. So accountability, responsibility, and measurability, all the three things come only in this profession, which is investment. Now, within the investment, there is a sell side, there is a buy side. Sell side means you are acting as an investment banker. Buy side means you actually are taking some of those inputs or you create your own inputs to zero in an investment, whether it is listed or unlisted, private, and or venture, that is early stage, and then you invest. And you have a thesis and you are playing with the thesis that whether the thesis is right or wrong. If it is right, you make a bumper exit profit. And if it is wrong, then of course there would be loss. And so it's a game. It is not a game of chance. It is a game of managing the risk by doing deep research. So when I say investment, I'm not talking about charts and technicals and all those stuff. Those are trading. I'm talking about investment in the sense that somebody is doing a deep dive in in an industry, understanding the drivers of the industry, and then zeroing in the trend, that what trend is coming, looking to the future, that what trend will be in vogue in future, and then getting into into an investment, and then staying with that investment to see his thesis plays out. Now, if you see the whole investment universe, the private equity, if we see it is a pyramid, the private equity comes, according to me, at the top end of the pyramid. Okay, the reason being that here you are doing something for 7-10 years. So the effort, the whatever you have done, the result will be coming after 5, 6, 7, 10 years. So one has to be very, very sure about what he is doing. One has to have a deep knowledge about that particular sector or about that particular company. Otherwise, there is no meaning of doing things. He is sitting on the board. He is getting into the operational nitty-gritty of the running the company along with the founder, promoter, or whomsoever management. So a lot of involvement is there in a private equity rather in a mutual fund or in a normal investment where somebody invests, somebody gets out, somebody sells out. So private equity, that's why, is more remunerative, but it is more fulfilling. Remuneration not on the monetary term, that is anyway a byproduct. It will come. For example, a private equity guy at my level will be sharing the profit of the exit, right? So those things are a byproduct. But main kick that we get or I get is that whether my thesis is playing out right. And so that's why it is at the top end of this thing. And of course, beyond private equity, I will say that if you manage your own money, that is the nirvana in investment, because then I am not answerable to anybody. So it is my money. I am deploying wherever I want, and I am staying as long as I feel that I should stay. It is all my decision and my action, which will be having some outcome. So I'm responsible, accountable for my outcome, my decision. So that is the last stage, but a lot of people will not be reaching that stage. But private equity is the top end of the pyramid. Below that would be the other investment, buy-side investment, like mutual fund, PMS, so many other ways of investment. So there I say that investment private equity, and it attracted me. So I came into private equity like that. That it was not planned that way, but it happened that way. I would say it is a matter of chance that I am doing. I got into this profession after my MBA.
Right. So one question from my side. So, do you think you would be venturing into the VC side of things since the startup scene is actually picking up? Do you see yourself now going to the?
The good question. The temperament, Amol, is very different for a venture capital, because venture capital normally, I am not a venture capital investor, and not everybody can do everything. According to me, one has to have his circle of competence. So a venture capital investor, normally he's, at least in the US, because it came from the US, so that particular model, venture capital model of Silicon Valley, so they tend to be very, very, focused, and the knowledge, very deep knowledge about one particular sector. Suppose it's a computer science, suppose it is a AI, the artificial intelligence, or anything of that sort, and then the deep knowledge of that, and then they use that knowledge, to incubate some of those companies who are into that field, that ecosystem, or who are creating that ecosystem. So I don't think that but after that, the investment decisions are more of a chance in case of venture capital world. For example, if there is nothing you can do to value at the very, very early stage, to value a kind of one particular idea which has come out from, say, the dormitory of IIT or dormitories of IIMs or anywhere, I don't know, not IIT, IIM, anybody can have any idea, how to value that idea. So at that point of time, it is a chance, matter of chance. So it is, you just spread it and pray, spray and pray. That is the theory normally in the venture capital world. But that doesn't mean that after the spray and pray, meaning you put money, $100,000 or $200,000 in 100 companies, and just pray that some of those companies will become a unicorn. Now that journey is more important. So some of those venture capital firm is excellent, and they excel themselves repeatedly in that journey of making just another idea to a unicorn. And by doing that, probably 9 out of 10 cases have gone bad. But that one case that succeeded, or success of one case, that covers up everything. So if you ask me personal level, whether I have invested in venture capital, no. Little bit I have done, but not in that venture capital, what you mean, that what today are in unicorn. Those are in the cutting edge of ecosystem that they created with artificial intelligence or GPS. All those OLAs and all those things are nothing but connecting some of those items together to make the app, which is ultimately benefiting the customer. No, I haven't done that, but I have done some very early stage investment and got the exit also very profitably.
So, Vikram here. So, sir, the first question that I'd like to ask was, how would you value a company? You could throw some light on the basic steps on how you value a company.
Okay. Again, whenever I meet the students, or I meet other professionals also, investment is not a science, and hence, no style can be copied, or no style can be repeated. We can read lots of books, but that doesn't make us a great investor. Otherwise, everybody can become, great in that thing. So it is a science and arts book, meaning that we all study in our books about discounted cash flow, some of the ratios of metrics and all those stuff, but that doesn't make, there is nothing. It is after 3 decades I came to understand that it is more of a common sense that matters. It is your conviction in one idea that matters. And of course, joining the dot, ability to join the dot. And for example, we all know that right brain, left brain, right? So we have one side of the brain which is very strong, which makes us strong in numbers. And most of the accountants and finance guys, and they are very good in that brain, right brain. But does it mean that we should be only having those discounted cash flow, or making that? Because the whole thing is based on so much of assumptions. So we have to also join the dot, understand the promoter psyche, understand the founder's psychology, knowing the driver of the business, that what is a tailwind in that sector. So all those things go into making an investment decision. And more importantly, making money out of the decision is a function of the ability not to get perturbed with the volatility that we will be seeing in the economy and hence in the market, because ultimately the ecosystem comes from the economy and then the stock market. Whether it is listed or unlisted, in case of listed, we are seeing every day it is going up and down because of the market dynamics. In case of unlisted, it will be going up and down because of the economic dynamics in the economics. So holding on, staying with the investment, with your conviction is not easy. It is very easy to say that one should be staying long term, but it is not at all easy. Had it been easy, then we would not have seen so much of bankruptcy in so many fund houses, etc., especially hedge funds. Remember that in the US in early 90s, there is a fund called LTCM, Long-Term Capital Management. They had 70 PhDs. We studied in finance. Most probably, most of you who are in finance probably will be studying or has studied Black-Scholes model of option pricing. Now, both of them are Nobel laureate, okay, who has come out with that particular option pricing model. They were the founder of that LTCM, and that LTCM gone bust. Now, you cannot doubt about the ability of those 70, 80 PhDs, including Nobel laureates, to value an investment, to come out with the most sophisticated computer-driven valuation matrix, right? But still it got bust and lost billions of dollars for only one reason. After the postmortem, it came out that the computer could not understand or could not generate the red flag, or even if it has generated red flag, the 70, 80 PhDs did not bother to go through that red flag, that excessive leverage can kill anybody. The fund was running at 98 or 99% leverage. So with every $1 million, they were leveraging $99 million. So if that is the case, then whenever there is a volatility, the net worth will be getting eroded and it will be bankruptcy. Exactly that happened. So to answer your question in one very short way, is that there is nothing called this is the way of valuation. This is the model of valuation. It is all at that point of time, what you understood, what is your conviction, how much deep analysis you have done about the sector, and how much you are seeing the future. Nobody knows the future. It is all based on hypothesis. It is all based on some assumptions. But if we are accurate enough about that assumptions and hypothesis, I think one can make money. End of the day, our investment should make us money. And when I say make us money, it is for the fund and for the investors. Otherwise, there is no point. So there are a lot of other decisions that go into investment. For example, there is no point of having $100,000 in an investment. Okay, $100,000 in our language is very high, 75 lakh rupees, but actually it is very low. But so even if 100,000 becomes 10 times, that is $1 million, right? But if I am convinced in an investment hypothesis, I should size that investment. There is no point of being 51% right and 49% wrong in an investment case. If I am convinced, I should put maximum money in that conviction, so that if I win, I should be winning big. I should play it not to please the others. I should play it to please myself. And that means that the obsession to win is very important, especially in a private equity world. Because in a market situation, in a mutual fund or in other, you are just playing to just little extra from the market return. Outperform little on the market return, you are okay. Nobody can say anything because the market has given me 20% and my fund has given you 25%. You should be happy, right? Because you have given me 5% extra you have got from the market. Not in the private equity, because the risk is high in private equity. The investment will go wrong. Some of the investment can go wrong. So if you win, you should win very big. That very big win should cover up your losses. And that's the way one should play. And that is the reason there is no right and wrong answer. But yes, the cash flow is the most important thing. We should be able to predict with reasonable certainty the cash flow for near future at least. There is no point of doing cash flow of 20 years. There is no point of a discounted cash flow where the terminal value is 95% of the final value. That means the company is not generating any cash flow in the near term. So I will rather go for those investment in those companies where the near-term cash flow is more certain. I hope I have made my case clear. If not, then I'm sorry for that.
You have given a lot of clarity, sir. Thank you very much.
So you were now talking about volatility and all. We saw during COVID how volatile it was due to the external environment conditions. And especially it's very difficult for a private equity firm going through that phase. So how did you manage your, were there any difficult phases which you faced during that time, or how do you deal with losses as such when these times do come up?
Okay, I think it's a good question, and it is very recent. Hence, it is in everybody's memory, because human memory is very short and we tend to forget. But over 30 years, and when somebody spends a lot of time in the investment world, then we have seen so many .coms and Harshad Mehta, so many things repeatedly, and of course 2019, 2013, 2008, 1999, etc. And then of course COVID. So COVID was not something new. So the most important point is that one should not get flustered, because one should getting jumpy with the market or with the economic up down when the market is. The best time to buy into the market is when everybody panics, right? It is very easy to say and very difficult to do. And that is the reason I say, and recently, because of the social media, I think all of you or most of you or some of you must have gone through one particular WhatsApp post of Mr. Mark Saylor. He was a hedge fund manager and in the US. And he apparently, I think 2008 he was there, but so he was giving some convocation speech to Harvard. And he was asked more or less the same question that, so I just quote him, but because most of the things that he told to the Harvard graduates, passing graduates, actually echo so much with my understanding and experience, and I think those are very generic again, but those are very real. So what he was telling is that if somebody can copy, suppose you have a trait, you have something in you, you have a secret of becoming a good investor, and if that secret is copyable, if somebody can copy that secret, then certainly that is not a moat. That is, moat means in investment parlance, we use the word moat very often. That is something which nobody can repeat, nobody has, you have. That is your moat. A company has a strong marketing team, and because, or for example, Paytm has a strong business model which is not copyable, and that is a moat. And then that will create the long-term sustainable return for the company. That is a financial term, but he was using this term in the human side. That he was telling that if you believe that by doing some curriculum or by studying so hard, because all of you, I'm sure, are at that 0.001%, because I am also from IIM and I have done. I understand IIT, IIM. So at that level. So naturally, you will think that we have something which will give us that sustainable edge. But actually, what Mr. Mark Seller was telling, that reading is important, knowledge is important, but anybody can do that. So what exactly, precisely, that will give us to the market return, that is something which is not definable. So he has told about 5-6 traits for a successful investor. So what he was telling was that ability to buy stocks when others are panicking and selling stocks when others are euphoric. Now, why I told this thing, why I brought this topic, was exactly that has happened in March 2020. When it hit us on 22nd March, that lockdown, COVID, the first reaction was that this is a catastrophe. But that was the time one should just step back and actually, I think we have done it, but many others must have done it. That what we have done is that we have created 2 filters for our investing companies. One of the filter was that, can the company survive? Can our investing company where we have made investment, whether this company will survive this year or next quarter, next 2 quarters, next 3 quarters? And the way to check is that, whether it has the cash, whether it has or whether their borrowing is so high that, paying, assuming there is no revenue, assuming there is no business because of COVID, whether the company can sustain themselves by cost cutting, by whatever, whether they can sustain themselves for this year. That means March 2021, up to March 2021. That is financial year 2020-21. That was the first filter. And many companies, 85% of our companies came out from that filter. Yes, they can survive. Then we put a second filter. The second filter was, why I am saying this is that this is the way as an investor should work, in the sense that step back, take a deep breath and step back, and then analyze the situation and act on that. Not react, but act after deliberation. So normally people react. So that's the reason. The second filter that we used is very simple, and these are common sense. It is not something from any. The second filter was whether March 22, that is this coming year, meaning current year, to 21-22, because we thought that COVID will go in 1 year time, 1.5 year time, because the history says that Spanish flu and all those stuff. So history says that it will, as a vaccine, that time we did not know about vaccine. So the vaccine will come in 1 year time. Once people get vaccinated, then things will go down. So March 22, will our company, surviving company of filter 1, will the company will do equal to or more than March 20 number? Because March 20, there was no COVID except for 8 days. So March 20 number, can they match in March 22? March 21 is a washout. we got some 70% of our company passing through that second filter. We invested more into those 70 companies. We increased our weight on those 70 companies, 70% companies. So I think that COVID taught us that human mind is very, very they will come out. Human being, just think about World War I, WW1, WW2. How many millions of people died in Russia, in Germany, in Europe, etc., in Japan? But whole Germany was smashed, right, because of the bombing by the Allied force. The UK, London was smashed because of the bombing. After that, it came back, right? So I think it is not the end of the world. There will be more COVID type, what we say, Six Sigma kind of black swan event. But we have to just step back, analyze, take a deep breath, and act on our conviction. I think that's it. We did not do anything special. I did not do anything special. But this is something which Mr. Mark Seller was telling, but this is something is very difficult to practice. So one should get in. Mr. Warren Buffett also says that one should not panic. When others are panicking, a good investor will not panic. The second point that he was telling is very important, and some of you, it will resonate with you, that one should be obsessive in the game that one is playing. Whether you are playing, investment is a game, right? So one should be obsessive. And obsession means that it would be always in your mind. It would be always in my mind. And by doing this 24/7, because ultimately I am playing for win, right? You have to play for win. There is no point of playing to just beat the index. There is no fun. And by doing this, there would be problem, I'm sorry to say, probably with your family. Because you might not be able to. A very successful investor often is, though they love their family, I'm not saying they are not loving, but because always at the end of the day, the back of the mind is that investment, that particular, in Hindi we call it junoon. So it is very important to have that obsession. But problem is, for example, if you have seen the movie Big Short, if some of you at least must have seen, and you must be remembering that Michael Lewis, the character, Michael Lewis, he was the person who actually called that bluff of Lehman during that housing bust in 2008. But so he was so obsessive. So that obsession, now the point is, can this obsession be taught? It's a psychological thing. One is obsessive or one is not obsessive. It cannot be taught. No book can teach that, to react and not to react, not to panic, or not to be not obsessive. One has to be obsessive. So it is very difficult. And similarly, the willingness to learn from the past mistakes is very important trait of a successful investor. Why I'm saying this is that, I must keep on learning. Learning doesn't stop. Till the end of the day of my life, I must continue to learn, especially from my mistakes. Making mistake is okay, but repeating the mistake is not okay, especially when somebody is managing others' money. Even if somebody is doing its own money, it is foolishness to repeat mistakes. But accepting one's own mistake is the most difficult thing in life. Just reflect upon this, because it is not a statement that I am making. It has to be not understood. It has to be felt by all of you that, accepting a mistake and learning from that mistake. I think, again, if somebody has that trait, he has it, he will become a good investor. But if somebody doesn't have, teaching this trait is, I think, impossible. Similarly, the risk, one has to be very, very cognizable about the risk part of the investment. Now, this risk is, people think that risk is volatility. We have been taught, the books after books have been written that the volatility of your investment, every day it is going up by 5%, go by, so the sigma, meaning standard deviation, etc. But those are not important. Those are the quantification of the volatility. Volatility is not risk. For example, in Hindi, recently one movie has come, Harshad Mehta, The Scam. And one statement I still remember, which has been made in that movie, risk mein ishq hai. Meaning, I love risk. As an investor, I must love risk. Because if you do your diligence properly, if you do your thesis properly, if I am good at my thesis, and I'm convinced about my thesis, and I'm obsessed about my thesis, my risk of that investment is actually very low. And I should really size up in that investment. So again, it's a trait. If you have it, you have it. And most of the time, a good investment is based on common sense. It is an ability to join the dots. You are seeing it, you are reading it, you are feeling it. That something is getting, for example, anyway, I don't want to get into too much of detail. For example, recently Nykaa is there, and sometime back Zomato came. There is a huge difference between Zomato and Nykaa. But that doesn't mean, I'm not saying anything more into that, but if one understands that difference, then that is nothing but common sense and joining dots. So these are the things. So when you ask me about, I might have digressed a little bit, which I did not want to be, but your question was more on the COVID time, how you manage on. It is simple as, it happened so many times. For example, which I gave you the example, Six Sigma event will happen in life. Everybody's life has Six Sigma event. Investment certainly will have Six Sigma event. But that doesn't mean anything. Those are the opportunity if somebody plays it right.
So I would like to ask the next question. Like Rothschild had said that buy the property when there's bloodshed on the street. So like, what's your view on doing certain alternative investment in order to hedge your, you can say, the wealth? So what should be the strategy in order to mitigate risk?
See, again, a very good question, but again, it's a kind of generic question. First of all, I do not know much about any other asset class other than the equity or equity investment as an asset class. Private equity is actually an alternative investment. It is not a regular investment because it is normally a large ticket size. Normally, it is a very long-term investment. Normally, it is illiquid investment, and hence it is inherently more risky. That is what the books and that in general the environment and the market that tells us. But if my view is that if you are good at something, you remain good at that. The problem here is that one can be easily be, we always aim to be the top 1% of something that we want to do. But easily one can be top 25%. Again, just try to understand the construct that I am making or I am proposing. It is more or less certain that if somebody really works hard, he can be within the top 25% of 3 fields. But it is really very hard to become 1%, top 1% of one field, right? Now, with human mind, human psychology, we try to be the top 1% of one particular field that we choose, which is very difficult. Not everybody can reach there. But instead, if we go for that top 25% of the 3 fields, I think it will do good for all of us. As an investment professional or as an investment person, I know for sure that to beat what is my goal? My goal is to create wealth, protect the wealth, and increase the wealth. These are the 3 things. First, I have to create, because I don't inherited anything. I means most of us did not, because we are not, probably most of us did not inherit too much of wealth. So we have to create that, we have to protect that, and we have to grow that, and then we have to protect that. Now, this is the only way that equity investment in equity, whether listed or unlisted, this is the only way one can beat the inflation over the long term. It has been proved. It is there is no debate on that. Now, in between, there can be other asset class. Gold can be an asset class. Nowadays, crypto is a craze. The real estate off and on becomes an asset class. So many other bond market, bonds are asset class. And one can be very good at all those things. But to have a sustainable wealth creation, beating the inflation over a long term, nothing can beat equity. So if I am good at it, I should strive to be good at my art, and that I have chosen in that as an equity, as an asset class. So for me, telling that how to diversify, I did not, because within one asset class, if I really play it long term, I need to diversify. The problem here is that most of the literature that we have, or we read, or we study, or we try to follow, those are all made keeping an eye to the market beating return by the fund manager, big fund managers, international fund managers, hedge fund managers. For them, beating the index is the most important. So they have to diversify between different asset class. That's the mandate that they are getting. But if your mandate is investing in equity in a company and make the company grow, and along with the company's growth, your investment will grow, and hence your wealth will grow for the investor that you are representing, I think one can easily do that investment.
Sir, before we proceed with the next few questions, is it okay if we extend the session by next 10-15 minutes? Because I can't say for others, but I am enjoying the session very, very much.
Okay, I think it is 15 to 7, so we will be doing at least up to 7. Yeah, okay.
Perfect.
I am also equally enjoying. So I hope that you guys are, yeah.
Absolutely, sir. So I think Vikram had a question.
Yeah, thanks so much. Sir, so basically there are many firms that are yet to be
Vikram, I missed you. You have to tell me.
So, yes, sir. So basically, market yet to break.
Vikram, your voice is breaking. I think so. You can post the question on the chat box. We can tell it to someone.
Sure. Amol, you just go on.
No, I have a question, Vikram. I'll ask it for you. So basically, he's asking that there are a lot of firms that are yet to break even, like Zomato and other firms like. One second. Which other firm that you mentioned, Vikram?
Paytm, Uber.
Yeah. They're yet to break even, but the valuation of these companies are still like skyrocketing. So the question is like, why are these valuations so high when the companies are not even profitable? And if the companies do not perform, then this might lead to a bubble burst. That's the question, Vikram, right?
Okay, very good question, and it is always in the mind. As I told you at the very beginning that I am not a venture capital investor, I do not understand this space. I still believe quite old-fashioned way that one has to make money in any business, and then only that business is can be valued. That doesn't mean that one should just not see all these business models. Because, for example, let's take Zomato. The way I see Zomato is, and I am not talking about the stock market price. It got listed. It is higher than the listed price. Paytm also will be doing very well. But we have to understand the business model. Now, the business model of Zomato, according to me, is it's an infinite, if not infinite, but more or less infinite market opportunity that they are playing. What it means? It started as connecting the restaurant to the consumer. So I did not go to the restaurant. I can go to the Zomato app. I just place the order of pizza. It will come from Domino's, and it would be delivered by a boy, and that boy will be earning some money out of the whole scheme of things. Normally it is 35 rupees per delivery. Now, but so originally they were replacing the customers' need to go to the restaurant. But today, I see the total addressable market, TAM, is equal to my mother's recipe, meaning, or your mom's recipe. What it means, they have gone to cloud kitchen. Now they have connected so many households, though many women, they are very good, or men or women, I don't want to do the gender thing, meaning they are very good in cooking, okay? They want to cook, but they are not able to reach. And I want to have that food of that maka dal, that is, that type of home food or something. Now, because of now the ability of connecting that particular dal or sabji to a customer who is sitting at some remote place, say in Kolaba, in Bombay, or Bandra, where I am based, and I want to have that dal, which can come from, say, Thane, if you know Bombay, because somebody is cooking there, or I want to have a Marathi. So these things, so all of a sudden, the total addressable market, it is not competing with anybody. It is not replacing a restaurant food by doing a new kitchen, or, the whole thing has can be huge. Today, if they are doing 10,000 crore or 5,000 crore, it can be 5 lakh crore tomorrow. Same thing for Paytm. Now, what is Paytm? Paytm today, it is coming in November, IPO. The Paytm is, the objective of Paytm is that today in India, the financial inclusion is very poor. You and I are not the representative of India, meaning we are the top end of India, but the bottom end of India, they go to bank, and you must be knowing, in Hindi, you call khata. Okay, when you go to a bank, they call khata khul gaya, correct? If you know what I'm meaning. Khata means khata, eating away your money, because all these banks traditionally, they are taking so much of money for every transaction. You open an account, pay money. You do an ATM transaction, pay money. You do draft, pay money. You do RTGS, pay money. Meaning khata, they are eating your money. The objective of Paytm is to become zero. So the transaction cost, the model that they are working is 0%. You open an account, it is 0. Your bank balance account, 0. You do a transaction and pay through a Paytm, 0. Now that means you do a mutual fund investment, 0. They are coming out as a mutual fund. They are the transaction cost would be 0. The same thing is zeroth house. So this type of disruption, if you are bringing, then your addressable market opportunity becomes so large, then your any valuation is much less compared to the possibility of that valuation. Now, I will stop here because it is a very sensitive subject and it is a very vast subject. Beauty lies in the beholder's eyes. I may think that at this valuation, it might not be good. Today, IRCTC, 1 year back, the valuation at which the stock has come, and today it has reached briefly 1 lakh crore. Before yesterday, what the government has done, and today they have they did the undoing part of that reversal of that decision. The stock actually came down, meaning market cap has come down, meaning beauty lies in the beholders. At that IPO price, it was government who sold. Some people bought. But after that 10,000, 12,000 crore market cap, today that 1 lakh crore market cap, somebody kept on buying somewhere, not same person, but different person. So valuation is a very gray area. So The idea is that, what value you are seeing and how much value you want to give for that. To me, companies like Zomato's or Paytm's or Nyka's are, the addressable market is so. What is Nyka? Let me, because the IPO is going on. The way I see Nyka is very different than, say, Amazon or actually the addressable market is so high. They have selected a particular niche segment, which is the female beauty product, right? Now, you know that female beauty product is a multi-billion dollar industry, trillion-dollar industry probably, because everybody wants to look good, everybody wants to feel good, and that's the way the advertising and merchandising has happened in the Western world. Now, this is a very intimate item in the sense that if I buy a lipstick and I put it on my lip, I am touching my lip. If I put something on my gloss, I am touching my, meaning a woman, I am talking about a woman. So it is very intimate that way. It is a chemical you are using on your body. So one has to be very careful about the brand that one is buying, right? So what Nyka, so the spurious brand can actually cause harm. So people are very cagey. So people know Lakme, or people know some of those foreign brands. But I am not knowing that if I buy a foreign brand I cannot buy foreign brand from Dubai or Singapore or London because I cannot go there. So currently the way out is Amazon or Flipkart, etc. But I am not sure that whether they are spurious or not, because the bottle might be same, but the perfume might be different, meaning chemical might be different. Nyka created the inventory-based model. Now, versus the market-based model of Flipkart and Amazon, meaning that in a marketplace, it's a market. Anybody, I can sell one perfume, okay, just in Amazon. I can be a vendor and I can sell and I can give you the spurious item. But in case of inventory-based, Nyka is buying those brands, keeping it with them. They have created that 80 stores, lifestyle stores, and they have used influencer for 4,000 influencers, and the target audience are the millennials. So what has happened is that these particular millennials, they know that I am buying something of perfume from Nyka, and Nyka platform is there. They know Nyka, and Nyka. So if anything goes wrong, they will hold responsible Nyka as a responsible. So this trust, when it is created, now doing an adjacency, selling adjacency, meaning you bring new product on the same platform is easy. So I think that companies like these, where the total addressable market can increase multi times, multifold from the current, the valuation also should reflect that. And that is the reason that these valuations are sustainable according to me. So the Paytm, the Zomato, Nyka, these type of valuations are sustainable valuation according to me. But again, beauty lies on the beholder's eyes. If you think that this valuation is too much, probably it is for you. But somebody whom you are selling and buying from you, probably he thinks differently. So that's the way the whole thing goes. Bubble, no bubble, time will tell. According to me, this type of companies where there is a genuine disruption they are doing, where the TAM, total addressable market size, is infinite, I think they will not be in a bubble zone very soon.
Got it, sir. That's a very detailed answer that you gave. So one question from my side. So I'm currently reading a book called Secrets of Sandal Road. I'm halfway through it. So it's a book about venture capital and what they look for companies they invest in. So I came across a saying in the book that says that more than the idea, VCs look for a solid team, a foundational team.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
how applicable is that in the private equity world, since the investment stage is very different? So VCs invest at the very beginning, so they need a strong team. But when private equity enter in the company, the team is already there. The team has already shown their potential. So, and how much applicable is that for a private equity firm? And if it is highly, if the applicability is very high, so what is it that you as an investor look for in a team?
I think you have, Amol, brought up a very important point that, what one should see when one is investing in a private equity or venture. Ultimately, investment is an investment. It is an art, it is a science, but it is also an art. I think the founders or the promoters, that is in Indian language we call promoter, but actually it is a founder family or the promoter, you can say, or the management. I mean, whomsoever is the ownership is the company. I think it is very important to be very right in that call, because if the call on the promoter is wrong, if the call on the jockey is wrong, whatever good, however good the horse is, it is very difficult, to win ultimately in the race. And then it cannot be only and only one person who is running the business. So what team he has? So it is always his vision, the founders or the promoters' vision, that the company will finally shape up the company. But along with that, the team matters. How good is the team? How long is the team, staying in the company? Whether they have been really, remunerated, not on the monetary term, but on the alignment of interest through the ESOP pool, etc., stock option pool. Now, those things matters a lot, and the characteristics of the promoter matters a lot. In a private equity, because my marriage would be for 10 years, 12 years, 8 years, not 1 month, 5 months, 1 year. So, like in a normal marriage, Indian marriage, you go to the other's place. I'm not saying girl's house, boy's house, meaning both of them will go. But more importantly, you keep on asking about, the circle, that do you know this particular family? It is that very important. So, no, a single meeting, a single dinner meeting, single lunch meeting doesn't make the investment decision should not be based on a single meeting. It would be a periodic, a meeting over a period of time. And more importantly, it is not the meeting only with that person. It is at different level, the meeting should be there. Very often, I can say about myself, I go and, I have food at their home. That tells so much, that how the family, how they behave. I have negated, I have not done some investment purely based on the the Facebook entry of the promoter's son or daughter, because that clearly told me that what life those son and daughter live, and that tells me that what life that promoter, meaning that particular family, is actually post office hour or post business hours. Because for me, it's a marriage. So these things matter quite a lot. The promoter, the character, the past, history, his performance, he's dealing with his own people, he's dealing with all the stakeholders so far, and the team that he has built, and the team that he was able to keep together. All those things matter. So that's why I say that sometime back, that it is more of an art. While it is a science, but it's more of an art. It cannot be taught. It has to be experienced, and that will come over time. Unfortunately, no book can, one can read a book, but one has to feel it, one has to experience it.
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely. So one additional question. So how do you decide on the amount of investment in any company that you look for? Is it just something that is driven by the company values, or it is totally driven by the kind of return that you're looking for? Like, how do you come up with the amount that should go in the company?
It is a tricky question, and I will be giving you a tricky answer. See, as long as you are putting your own money, which I said the nirvana of the investment world, that I am doing my own on my own, and I am doing what I want to do. And if I don't want to do something in the whole year, I'll be going to the beach of Goa and sit down. That is a nirvana. Now, in that case, you can really size your investment maximum. in one particular investment. But in a real world where you and I are, working or, you are playing, we are playing with others' money, others people's money. So the size of our investment will be dependent on how much money I have, how much fund I have at my disposal to invest, first and foremost. And I cannot put all the eggs in one basket, which is a common sense. So even if I have $500 million, that doesn't mean that I can put $500 million in one company. So naturally, there has to be some companies where, and if that company's requirement is $50 million or $100 million, I should be able to write a check of 50 or 100, right? I cannot, just because I have 500 or 1 billion, I should not put, you take more because I need to put more. Sorry, that doesn't work, because ultimately that business has to make return out of my investment. Then only I can make money as an investor, right? So it is a complex. The answer is not something that. But if your own money you are investing, and if you are really convinced about an idea, you are obsessed about that idea, you should put really a big size. There is no point of putting a small money and making an outsized gain. It doesn't change the needle, move the needle of your asset. So your best idea should have very large sum of allocation. Then only your needle will move and your asset base can increase disproportionately. And that is the goal, and that should be the goal for any investor, especially when an investor is investing his own money.
Right, sir. Noted. Sir, I think this feels like a right time to stop. We've touched 7 p.m. Guys, if there are any other questions you want to ask, or just if you think we should end the session?
I can take one last question before we close it, because I also enjoyed this session quite well.
So thank you so much for joining for this session. This was like an absolute delight. I wish you a very good evening. Hope to interact with you soon again, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, sir.